page. From the thrilling pages of the DC comic,
faster than a speeding bullet,
a myth is forged.
more powerful than a locomotive,
A hero takes flight.
able to leap tall buildings at a single bound. This amazing stranger from the planet Krypton, the Man of Steel, Superman.
Welcome to the Superman Reborn post-game episode of Superman Lives. This is Chris Moe.
And I'm Michael Kreitzer.
And we are very excited to be back here 2 weeks after our last episode where we did the midway evaluation of Superman Reborn. And it's neat to finally be here at the end of this story. Got a lot of different thoughts and feelings about it, which Michael and I have not really had a chance to talk about. So we're going to be hearing them for the first time, our takes on it, and as will you as you listen. And this seems to me, Michael, to be a wonderful ending. Now, we're going to spoil the heck out of this, so if you haven't read it, then and you haven't read a Newsarama article about it, then you're going to want to probably move on, because we're going to spoil it. But it is a great ending. I thought that I like the ending. I just wonder if there wasn't another way to go about it. And I also had some issues with some of the vague nature of it. But I have a feeling, hopefully, that I'm right, that there's a purpose for that, a larger purpose. So we're talking, of course, about the final issue, which is Action Comics 976, and it is the resolution not only to Superman Reborn, but really, in a lot of ways, it's the resolution to Rebirth so far for Superman, for Rebirth in probably a large sense, the entire DC universe. And I would even say it's a resolution for the New 52. And Michael has, we did talk about this, and he's read it, and I haven't. Over in Nightwing, there was some very interesting stuff. I saw some of the pictures of that online. And then apparently in The Flash, there was a very interesting, in the same week that Reborn ends, there's something big that happened in The Flash. So we can go ahead and talk about that first. What's going on in Nightwing?
Well, in Nightwing, we did have the previous meeting with our pre-New 52 Superman. Did come to meet Nightwing, and he sought Nightwing out because the Nightwing that he remembered, Dick Grayson from our old good pre-New 52 Nightwing, was always so fun-loving and so bright and optimistic, and that's what made him the perfect Robin to Batman, and balancing things out. So Superman sought him out. I forgot what the exact circumstances were, but they ended up having this adventure together. And at the end of it, Superman is still of the understanding at that point that he was from an alternate universe, that this was this completely new universe. This wasn't his world. He was from that idea. So he told Dick, he said, of all the people I've met, you're the most like the counterpart of my world. And I thought that was cool, because Nightwing should be, he was so bright and so fun, and I know the New 52 tried to drag him through the mud as much as possible, but it was just really hard for them to kill that completely. And of course Rebirth brought him back from all of that, so I thought that was neat. And then he also told Dick about the Dick from his world, quote unquote, had set up shop in Bloodhaven, and now we see our Rebirth Nightwing moving to Bloodhaven, and that's where he's dealing and having his adventures and working things out now. So it's really been a cool little way for Superman to rub off on somebody else, in this world. Of course, now now Superman knows. At least he should know. We haven't really got to spend much time with him after this revelation of the issue, but he should know at this point that he was no longer from a different world. These were two. He'd been split in these two aspects. I don't know how else you would describe it.
Right, and it is left very vague, which is one of the things I was just talking about that I'm not too happy with. But I think it's very interesting that that's going on in Nightwing, and then this is going on in Reborn, and then over in The Flash, Michael. I don't know if you saw this. Did you read that issue, or do you read The Flash?
I picked it up eventually, and I've actually got the newest issue, and I just haven't read it yet. I didn't know there was anything pertaining to this. I'm going to have to go read it right after this now.
Well, I don't want to spoil it for you then.
That's okay. I'll enjoy it the same.
Yeah, it won't. It's not going to really. If anything, it might make it more enjoyable because I didn't. Again, I haven't picked up the Flash. I'm reading Titans because I wanted to follow Wally. There apparently, just from what I read online, there's a scene where the current New 52 version of Professor Zoom, who I think has these kind of red eyes, maybe I really haven't paid attention, but there is a scene where this wave passes over him, and once it passes over him, you actually see him revert to the pre-Flashpoint version of Professor Zoom in the classic uniform. So there's no seams, there's no extraneous lines. You can see his eyes, and he tells Barry Allen that he remembers Thomas Wayne Batman, and he remembers killing his mom, and he remembers Flashpoint. And so the implication there, from what I read online, because again I didn't read the whole issue, just those pages, was that he was actually turning before Barry's eyes. He was becoming his pre-Flashpoint self. And so that's very interesting, because this begs the question in light of Reborn: is, Superman is, at least appears to be, the only guy who was actually divided into two. But was everybody? And did somebody else go? Is there another aspect of every DC character out there that is, I don't know where, and then was somehow at some point is going to be reconnected and merged? I don't know. But it's a very interesting development, and of course nothing happens. I'm learning that nothing happens in Rebirth, post-Rebirth, by accident. It's all connected, which I think is great. Yeah. I think it's just really beautiful. It makes you want to read every book, and I wish I could afford to do it and had the time, because if I did, I would. To be able to pick up all of these little pieces as they fall together. So we've got this idea of resetting, and it seems from 976. So we'll just kind of go through the basic story. First issue of Reborn, we find Jonathan being erased from existence, and we find out that it's the mystery Clark Kent behind it. Second issue, we find out the mystery Clark Kent is, in fact, Mxyzptlk. We find out why and where he's been and how he's gotten involved with all this. Part 3, I got to be honest, I don't really remember much about it, except that we found that the New 52 Superman and Lois existed as red energy, which happened over in Superwoman. And then they merge, or it looks like they take over the bodies of the other two at the very end of that issue, and they're with John. And we open 976 with New 52 Superman and Lois not knowing who John is, and that very interesting line where it sounds like something that's a little dig at Dan Didio, where Lois says, "Well, silly child, don't you know that Superman doesn't have a family?" And so that's a great little zinger there. It reminded me of the Trix Rabbit, the way she said it, silly, because I think that's what she says, silly kid, or something to that effect. I'm looking at the issue now. Let me make sure I'm not.
I remember that moment. I don't know the exact word.
She says, "Poor little boy. Everyone knows Superman doesn't have a family." That's what it is. Poor little boy. And I thought, man, that's a great little, maybe some kind of meta context, which this whole thing, I mean, the penultimate chapter ended with Deja New 52, Mxyzptlk saying it, right? And so we get into 976, and John is told by Mxyzptlk, "You have just redone to your father what was already done to him," meaning you've restored him to the split version, the New 52 version. And so through the course of this issue, we find out not how or who's responsible, although it's alluded heavily, that Superman at some point was split into two, and one version went on to become the New 52 Superman, and the other went now. We could have said before this issue, we know how, at least we know where the pre-Flashpoint Superman went. He went to Telos, because that was what happened in Convergence. Now, as of this issue, I don't think so anymore, and we'll get to that in a minute. So we find out from Mxyzptlk at the beginning of this that he is not responsible. He does not have the power. He makes it very clear, I don't have the power to do this. This is beyond me. I can just work with what is. So he didn't create the New 52 Superman, as I had suspected. He is not behind the split. And it didn't seem to me, Michael, and maybe I'm wrong, it didn't seem like Superman Red and Blue was really involved per se either. Did you get the
No, other than just the colors, I didn't catch any references to that old storyline or anything. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and the Jurgens interview that he did with Comics Alliance, which it's interesting because he went on to Twitter right after the Mxyzptlk issue, and he said, all sites that revealed this, I will no longer give interviews to. And then, of course, he went and did an interview with Comics Alliance, but I think that there must have been a deal there. I don't know what happened, but he said that, or may have been Tomasi that said, well, it's of the spirit of that storyline, but it isn't necessarily continuing it or even connected to it. So that's interesting, though, because so Superman is always red and blue aspects that can be. I mean, can you just split him anytime you want? Yeah. So I'm assuming we may find out eventually that the person responsible was able to do this because it had happened before, which would be a very Jeff Johnsian way of looking at things. Going back into continuity, there's a precedent, so you were split once, you can be split again. But we may never know, and that kind of frustrates me. So that's another thing we'll come back to, that and Convergence. And then we find that the New 52 Superman and the New 52 Lois, who has black hair, she, and they're both younger, don't know John at all. And so Mxyzptlk says, you've lost, and that's it. There's nothing I can do about it. And this wonderful moment where where Jonathan connects with the blue forms of Superman and Lois, who are his mom and dad, and we get the merger. And not only do we get the merger of these two characters, which we find out from Mxyzptlk, Superman was split into two, and now they're being recombined. But then we get this new 2-page spread that shows us a new timeline. And heavily implied in this new timeline is that a lot of things that we know happened one way no longer did. So it looks like we see more of a nerdy Clark Kent as a teenager. We see all of his villains there, so they aren't really changed. Metallo looks like the New 52 Metallo, but it's really kind of hard to tell. And then what's very interesting, we see Jonathan being born in the Fortress of Solitude, not the Batcave, which is how it happened in Convergence. We see the wedding, we see an allusion to the death, Clark revealing himself, I guess Clark getting his job, getting the job at the Daily Planet. We see the secret origin version of Jor-El and Lara, which I thought was very interesting.
That's very cool.
And Lois says, we're waking from a dream. She said, I feel like we're waking from a dream. And then we see Perry White holding baby Jonathan with Clark and Lois and Jimmy, who is tickling baby Jonathan. So these
younger Jimmy too, as he should be.
That's right. Yeah, he looks more teenage-ish. So that throws out, which I was kind of hoping it wouldn't, but it looks like it throws out the idea that Clark and Jimmy were close. That they were like in the New 52. So based on that page, I don't see a whole lot of New 52 stuff sticking around at all.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I even taken the pages before it and after it. I like the way visually they're doing this, because I know that they're having to do a very delicate dance, because they've like we've said so many times, they really screwed the pooch and painted themselves into a corner with this insisting on the New 52 so much. So now they're having to redo it with keeping whatever fans that gained, or whatever, the 3 of them out there, that were hardcore New 52 Superman. So they had to do this delicate dance. So we see first, I thought it was interesting that once all the red and blue energies did merge, and we have our one Superman there, we first see he's still dressed in the New 52. He still looks like New 52 Superman as he kisses Lois and as John hugs him there.
Right.
And then we see the more full merger in that next frame. But then the next, we get that 2-page spread, as you were saying, where we have all of the it's really cool how it's done too, because you see the almost the shape-ish of the Superman shield in the middle, through which we see all the villains, and then you see the shatters of almost like glass or whatever around it, where all of these moments of his life are converging. And I love that you said there are some scenes that are looking a little different than we would expect, like being born in the fortress rather than the Batcave and such. But predominantly, I see, you mentioned maybe Metallo. I don't really see anything New 52 related on there, and I kind of like that, because here's the danger that they're going with this storyline. Okay, now the new 52 Superman, and the pre-52 guy that we've all loved as our guy, are coming together, and they're coming back together as Superman. Well, the danger is, I'm thinking, I still don't want to see any elements of that new 52 bratty child in my Superman. You're going to combine them. That's neat. You're trying to combine the fandoms there and get everybody on the same page, but I still don't want any parts of that Superman, at least personality-wise and stuff, in my new guy. And I think, again, time will tell. The next issues will tell. But it feels like, from what they're showing us here, they're trying to say, it's almost like that's just a gesture to the new 52 fans. We're back now. We're still good old. So maybe when they says they're split in two, they're not exactly half and half. Maybe that's the way it's going to be explained, to where that's why we did have the new 52 Superman more petulant, more moody and stuff like that, because he really wasn't the fullness of Superman. He didn't have even the fullness of a half. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That he was maybe just this not fully matured aspect of Superman that was given life. I mean, when you look at the original Red and Blue story, now we should say post-crisis, not pre-crisis. You look at the red side of Superman was the more angry, petulant, fly off, the handle kind of guy. So if this is just a callback to that, then we can kind of maybe infer that's why he acts this way. Because I thought it was really great how Doug Mank in this story noticed that New 52 Superman doesn't have a whole lot of patience. Neither did the other Superman, to be honest. But he grabs, he goes to choke Mxyzptlk, which is pure New 52 Superman move. And then after that, when Mix turns into Clark Kent, he actually throws him, to the ground. So I thought, man, this is very well done that they're showing us this kind of last gasp of the personality of this guy. And he was always more rough, I think, and he had some brighter moments. Again, as we talked about last episode, or before that, only in the Morrison arc. Here, though, for the rest of the New 52, he was especially the way Jeff Johns wrote him, he was very violent. He wasn't murdering people, but he was tossing people around, and with Batman, he could have killed him in their first meeting. So I get the feeling that maybe that's been subdued somehow. Certainly, I don't think this two-page spread is telling us everything, nor could any two-page spread tell us everything, unless George Perez drew it, right? And in which case he could put in every scene, because he's so good at that. But the impression I get here is that we're going to have unfolded over the next year where things fit in and where things don't. And I would like to see very small parts of the New 52 origin, but that's it. I would...
Grant Morrison, yeah.
Right. I would love to see the Daily Star. I just think that was a great idea that Morrison had, because it's aligning his timeline so that you can use the Golden Age and the Silver Age and beyond. Really don't want to see any more of the New 52 Superman than those moments. And so hopefully we won't. I don't honestly know, like you were saying, I really don't think we're going to see much. And I've been on the DC message boards for the last couple of days, and there are so many people, and again, relatively speaking, not that many, but on the boards, you would really believe on those boards that 400,000 people per cubic meter loved this character. Billions. There are more people that love the New 52 Superman than Earth can hold, according to some people on the DC message boards. And I'm thinking, no, of course not.
They're a very vocal minority.
They are, and God. And so I really think going forward, we may, because this was a big topic on the message boards, and I've seen it in other places, what is the new origin going to look like? And is this going to be something that they spell out, or are we still going to have some kind of flux until Rebirth ends? And I have my opinion on that. What do you think, Michael? Do you think this is going to just be left vague from now on?
Well, sorry, I know you don't hear it, but I'm echoing there.
Uh-oh.
Okay, I'm back. So I started saying this about the art, and then I got sidetracked and went somewhere else. But yeah, so I before we see this two-page spread of the realignment or how the history is going to be from now on, we see the one-page spread of him still dressed as New 52 Clark. So that's like the New 52 side. And then we don't see Rebirth side again. We don't get to see, okay, that was the New 52 half, and we're not shown the Rebirth half. We just see that as blue energy. and before we see the new Reborn uniform and the new Reborn, re-put together Superman. So I think that really what you're seeing here is that this origin, all these pieces from our true, more iconic Superman's past, that's the Rebirth side coming into this equation. And then the very next page is our one-page spread of our new Superman Reborn, which is our classic Superman and everything but the trunks and belt, which they're refusing to ever give us now. But we've got the red boots back, those weird fin things from the sleeves are gone,
yes.
the S shield, the cape attachment, everything is our classic guy again. So that's what leads me to think that really this is going to be the way that it's going to be shown, at least, that more of Superman was in the pre-New 52 portion that was broken off. So I think I don't know if we'll get definitive, exact truths beyond that or details beyond that. I think that would probably mess up what they're trying to do by uniting the fans or whatever. But I think that's going to be the insinuated truth. I think that's my take anyway.
Okay, so almost as if since the Rebirth version had been subdued when the New 52 version came back, that this is kind of the Superman Blue version overriding and restoring New 52 Superman to where he should have been anyway, which is exactly what the merge is. Okay, that makes sense. And you're right, because it's not clear in the art at all. And we don't see that, and I'm actually relieved we don't see it again, because I was getting really tired of it. The costume that looked like it was supposed to be Man of Steel with the blue boots.
Oh yeah,
it looked like a onesie. It was better than the New 52, but I was ready for it to go.
I almost think that they purposely gave him blue boots, for example, knowing that they were going to recombine him somehow.
Right.
So they wanted it. They wanted some. They wanted at least. In this equation, the red boots come from the New 52. We know they really don't, but at least in this visual approximation of it, maybe that gives the New 52 suit some more things to add to the finished product.
Yeah,
so that's why they went for the blue one for the Rebirth.
Right, and suggests that element of Superman that was the red is back, right? So now there's it restores balance to the costume too, because without the red boots, it's really imbalanced, and of course without the trunks, it's really imbalanced. But that brings me to my I guess vision as to whether or not it's where they're going. I don't know. So we have, once this happens, we have this merger, we have the 2-page spread, we see key events in Superman's life, and I think it's interesting because we know the next issue of Action, or maybe it is Superman, and I don't remember, is going to be an Andy Kubert cover, and I don't know if you've seen it yet.
No, I haven't.
It's got different moments in Superman's history. One is him flying with a flagpole, and the American flag looks like Superman 2. Another one is him breaking these kryptonite chains. Interestingly enough, though, he's in the Rebirth suit. So is the implication going to be they're retconning that he never wore the trunks and that he had the Rebirth suit until he was remerged? At the same time, Jurgens said it pretty clearly, this new timeline, there never was a split. So it's all very timey-wimey and kind of left vague. And I think the only reason for that, one, like you said, they don't really want to alienate some of the fans. But I think also they know that this is, I think they've, with this story, made it very clear Superman is front and center. Someone, and we're led to believe that it's Dr. Manhattan, split Superman. Now, going back a few issues, it might have been last issue. No, it was the issue we found out about Mxyzptlk's involvement. He's told by Mr. Oz, events are transpiring with the Man of Steel along a certain course, and I removed you from the board so that you would not interfere. Well, if it was Manhattan who caused the split, and those are those events, then that's kind of heavily suggesting that Mr. Oz is maybe in league with Dr. Manhattan. Because if he's against him, why would he want that to not be interfered with?
Yeah, you're right.
So another kind of thread there, another mystery. We also don't find out, Mr. Oz, what kind of involvement did he have with New 52 Superman? Johns had that scene when he introduced Oz way back last year or 2 years ago, where Oz says, I taught you to get up after you fall. So I don't know. So there's still some real vague stuff going on. And Mr. Oz, very interestingly, is surprised in this beautiful scene. He is surprised that they were able to undo what presumably Manhattan did, right? And he says the power of their love was able to restore things to the way they had been before. And I just thought that is a huge rebuttal of the New 52.
Absolutely.
Did you get that feeling from that scene too?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, they've time and time and again, and that was a beautiful scene to reiterate it, but over and over again, they've flat out come out and said that the New 52 is an aberration. It's not, it's what happened when something wrong happened to the DC universe. I mean, that's just the way they continue to portray it, which I love.
Yes, me too. And Oz says, for them and those connected to them, twin realities are now united as one. So very interesting. So these two Superman's realities united as one, which they had been previously, which is why I really do think if you were doing a percentage, we're looking at 95, maybe even 99% pre-Flashpoint, and then 1% New 52. And he also says, yet questions remain, and he says that there are forces behind what has been set in motion, and then Oz says, is it Superman who has the final say, or him? So him, we see a shot of Earth's moon, which this kind of gave me chills a little bit. The idea that maybe it wasn't just them saying, okay, we're talking about Dr. Manhattan, and he's not the moon, I'm sorry, Mars. And we're not just alluding to that connection. We're showing you, guess what? The big bad for Rebirth is hanging out 2 planets over. You know what I mean? Or a planet over. So
and that's where we saw Dr. Manhattan.
That's right.
And Watchmen, right?
Yeah. So is he right there? And did he set up shop in the DC universe on its Mars and then begin manipulating the timeline? So I thought that was a really cool ending to set up future stories. And one criticism I've seen levied against this whole story is that it feels like a teaser trailer for the rest of Rebirth. And I get that, and I do think it was light on story. I think this could have been a really 2-parter easily.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's a teaser for something I care about and I'm interested in, and more importantly, Superman's at the heart of, I have no problem with, and think it's really exciting.
And it did really, I mean, I'm really excited and relieved at this point to finally have an end to this whole mystery of our Superman thinking that this isn't his world. I'm glad now that it's restored to the point where he's still our Superman, and he knows that this is his world. I mean, he's got to at this point. I'll really be disappointed if they somehow figure out a way around that. But I mean, he's got to at this point stop talking about, the people of his world. He's got to know that these are the people of his world. That something's just been done to them, just as Wally and Barry know.
Correct, and it seems implied because when Jonathan says, "Can we go home?" they appear in Metropolis, and we know from the solicits for the Aftermath, which begins this week, that we are going to see them back at the Daily Planet, and I'm assuming they've never left the Daily Planet. So it does invite a lot of questions. Did convergence happen? And I think convergence more and more is maybe even being completely ignored, even though that's how we got the pre-Flashpoint Superman back. Maybe it's going to be retconned that it didn't happen, that the split wasn't Brainiac, it was Dr. Manhattan. Or it would be better to say Brainiac might be in league with Dr. Manhattan, that maybe this is a massive conspiracy on the part of people who have a problem with Superman.
Well, as much as I liked elements of the Convergence stories, especially from our Superman, I guess that would make a little bit of sense because Convergence was the company's launch into DCU, which was just utterly ridiculous. But that was their first attempt to reunite all the fans. Say, there's something for everybody, but there really isn't. You know? So, and then they realized the silliness and realized that wasn't working, and they went ahead and launched into Rebirth. So it would make sense to me that they retcon it just from different movements, but like you said, I would also be disappointed that some of the cool elements were lost there. Right.
It would just seem weird to me that you had it, and the reason I think it's so important that question be answered, and I don't know that anybody's asked directly any of these guys, did convergence happen, or are you going to address it? What the implications are if it wasn't, then how do any of these people still exist? Because I thought for a long time Rebirth was going to establish that we were dealing with some kind of multiverse issue, where our original versions were on another Earth. Because if you read Convergence, Crisis is prevented. And so that means that Superboy Prime never went bad. That means Kal-El was still alive and well with Lois. And so even Barry, Earth 1 Barry and Kara would still be alive. But it doesn't seem that way. So did it happen? If the crisis didn't happen, you never had an Infinite Crisis. The last 30 years didn't happen. And Dan DiDio, in a tweet right after Convergence, said, yeah, pretty much that's exactly what happened, that the last 30 years didn't happen, and that the new multiverse from Multiversity is the old multiverse kind of imprinting itself on this new multiverse or vice versa, and it was very confusing. And then the guy that wrote Convergence, Jeff King, he didn't even know. He contradicted what Didio said, and then people are reading this. If you go back and read issue 8, it's very unclear in the art. So I almost wonder if Jeff Johns is going to address it in some way, but in a very minor way. But there were some great ideas in there, and it would be nice to know. I mean, Morrison said there is a multiverse now. So this is just one bubble in the champagne glass of the multiverse, meaning these 52 Earths here. So we'll see, and that certainly would be great if they address it. I think they're going to, and I even think that the new 52 multiverse is being rewritten because of what happened in Nightwing, because wasn't Earth 2 Robin in that issue? Didn't Nightwing see his Earth 2 version? I think I read that somewhere. But
it's been so long since I read that issue because that was quite a few issues ago. I'm not. Right. That sounds somewhat familiar there.
If I'm not mistaken, because I read about it. I read an article and it said that he was seeing all these, Deathwing. I'm not familiar with if that's like an evil version.
Oh yeah, no. Yeah, Deathwing was from the last issue, but Professor Pig had made Idolatron to come up with Deathwing or whatever. That's a previous issue, yeah.
And then, but he sees in the page I saw, then there's a shot, and it looks like the Earth 2 Dick Grayson, because he's got the bat symbol with the R in the center. And so some people were speculating that means that the multiverse itself is being affected by Rebirth, which makes sense that it would be. And so that's how we're going to get the JSA back.
That would make sense.
Because if that gets rewritten, that's the only way we would get it back, I guess, even though that would be on a separate Earth. But maybe something's going on with the remerging of Earths, and I don't know. That's probably beyond our scope of knowing and understanding.
There is one more little implication that you brought up Supergirl or Superwoman, excuse me, how Superwoman was a portion of our tie-in or episode of this, and I like the fact that in that tie-in issue with Superwoman, Lana almost seems to have some elements of her pre-Flashpoint self restored, because all of a sudden she's wondering why Clark, why do you love Lois and not me? And that's pre-Flashpoint Lana. That's not New 52. Because of course Superman never did love Lois in New 52 or whatever. So maybe we're going to see some reverberations like that through the other characters now. After Superman Reborn. So that's kind of interesting to be excited about and look for.
Right, because in this issue it says that this timeline has been united. Twin realities have been united as one for them and those connected to them. So does that mean the entire DC universe, or does that just mean the Superman family of characters?
Well, as you often say, as Superman goes, so does the DC universe goes. So maybe it's going to reverberate out through him first, the close characters, and then on to the others.
Right. I mean, I would love to see Superman as kind of a Paul Revere, going through and saying, this has happened and guess who's coming? Somebody who did this to me. We know the next issue of Trinity, he's going to go tell Bruce and Diana that this happened to him. So perhaps,
and he's just gone to see Supergirl at the end of the last Supergirl issue too.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So he maybe is now on the mission that to some extent Wally is too, or at least what he did with the Titans, helping them remember. So, I think overall as a story, it might read better collected as a trade, but I couldn't be happier with the ending, even though I would like to have known more of the how. Certainly the why, I think, is pretty clear that whoever's behind this, if it is Manhattan, that could be a swerve. I've heard some great theories that Oz is Superboy Prime, or the guy we think is Manhattan is Superboy Prime. I don't know about all that, but whoever it is obviously recognized I need to diminish Superman, and by doing that I diminish the DC universe, and that's what he did. Definitely. And then that's what Superman undid. So it actually puts, if you go back all the way to Infinite Crisis, you have that great scene with Alexander Luthor talking about rebuilding the multiverse, and he said, I need Earth 2 Superman, I need Kal-El, because everything comes from Superman. And now it seems as if everything comes from Superman and Lois. Their love is at the center of it all, which I think is just, that's
beautiful. Yeah,
that's wonderful. So, go ahead.
No, I was just maybe you're already on your way here, but I just wanted to talk about the uniform as well, the Superman Reborn uniform a little bit.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's I'm really happy. I mean, I will never stop arguing that the trunks need to be there. It just looks silly without the trunk. No matter what you put there beside the trunks, nothing's a good substitute. I'll never stop arguing that. That aside, though, I'm so happy to see so many great things back. I mean, this is our iconic uniform and everything but that area. As I was just saying, there's not even the athletic ribbing of the lines of the suit. No more of that. It's just what the suit should be. And it almost makes me, and again, I've heard so many different theories and so many people say different that or why we don't have the trunks, but it almost makes me feel like, because if there was ever a moment to bring back the trunks, now would be it. You could get away with it. It makes sense. You're going back to the iconic, continuities and stuff like that. It would make sense to do it. It makes me think that there's got to be just some idiot in corporate who just says no, absolutely not. No matter how many times people try to get it back, they just say nope, that's not going to happen. So I mean, if you were an artist, if you were an editor or whatever working on the comic and you were up against that just kind of ignorant mandate, it does seem like they've tried to make every overture to the trunks without actually putting them on there. We have a solid belt now, at least, and the trunks, when they were there, they offered a great mirror of the triangle, the shield design, right? They were pointing down to the inverted V in the boots, just as the shield did, and we don't have that without trunks now. But at least we have that little yellow buckle, which gives some yellow to the middle and also echoes that shape. Still not doing what the trunks would do, but it's I think it's a nice. It's if some idiot's just not letting us have the trunks, at least we've got this, which is pretty cool.
Right, because I've read in many places that the reason we probably aren't, I mean, I've had people tell me, you're an idiot, and the trunks are never coming back, accept it. And I thought, okay. 5 years ago, I would never have thought this could happen. In fact, Dan Slott, I got into it. I'm not a fan of Dan Slott, but he's on the Comic Book Resources message boards, and I was in the Spider-Man section. I never go there, but I was. And he told somebody very rudely, he said, those of you who keep wondering when they're going to undo One More Day, which if you're not familiar with that, that's where they got rid of the Spider marriage. And he said it's never going to happen. Accept it. Go read Renew Your Vows, which is an alternate universe take, and get over it. And I replied to him and I said, I think some of your coworkers across the street probably said we'll never undo the New 52. And I said this week it was pretty much undone. So I'd be real careful in saying never, pal. And he didn't answer me. He's notorious for coming back at people. But I said that, and then I complimented some of his work that I do like. And I think I don't know if it threw him off or what, but I really think if they're not allowed to, it is because movies don't have the trunks, the cartoons don't have the trunks. Yes, the marketing still does, a lot of the merch still does, but who knows if that could be tied up in litigation. They have to have it. The only way I could see that they wouldn't bring them back here is because everything is still in flux as far as the universe as a whole, and even Superman. I mean, we don't have all the answers, and when you look at Infinite Crisis, I keep going back to that because that was such a huge, I think that was such a move in the right direction after a lot of the things that were going on before Infinite Crisis, bringing back Silver Age elements and updating them in a new way. And then it got derailed by the New 52. So the theory out there that I've read that I like is that this is really just taking Superman where he should have been. He had an adopted son in post Infinite Crisis. He had Christopher Kent. Here, this is doing what they should have done, which was giving him an actual biological son. So the idea that maybe Rebirth is going to bring us along the track that we always were going to go with Infinite Crisis, if that's the case, the trunks may come back. Because maybe they're just saying, how how many copies we can sell of Action Comics 1000? And I'm going to hold on to that until it's proven untrue. That they're going to wait until, what a marketing... that'll get a lot of press. Superman's underwear come back in 1000th issue, Yeah. So even though they're not underwear, and of course that makes me want to punch people. But, somebody argued with me on the message boards again last week and said, most people or nobody wants the Trunks back and nobody likes him. And I said, I know a lot of people that, in fact, I don't have any friends that are as passionate as I am. And the people who don't know these characters, when they see these new versions, they'll go, well, where are Superman's trunks? They usually call them his underwear. And that's fine because they don't know. But where are they? And they don't see Superman and go, man, those are granny panties. I hate them. They go, that's Superman. I've even had people see the new Justice League Batman poster and ask, why is he wearing a onesie? Where are his trunks? Now, that's huge, So I really hope that I'm holding out hope because I can't do anything else. I really want to see that look back. And they've gone so far. To me, even if the work of Lee Bermejo, I know you're a big fan, Batman Noel, look at how he draws the suit there. All you have to do is add a couple of, and I'm not talking about armor seams, I'm talking about just a few lines to give some more definition. And I think the classic suit can come back. It's true because it's not just a fanboy nostalgia thing. It really is logic. My college composition students who aren't even the ones interested in taking my superheroes class, they're just, they're learning how to college write. And when it comes to that, structuring an argument, I'll put together an argument that I have for the Trunks, talking about the aesthetics and the color balance and then the history and all that kind of stuff. And, I'll lay that out as kind of an example of how to lay out an argument. And they've all, even the ones who just don't care, or even the ones who snarl every time I say something bad about Man of Steel, they always, no matter what, whether they don't care or whether they like the Man of Steel uniform or whatever, after I lay out a logical argument, they always agree, yeah, you're right, he should have the trunks. Yeah, I don't know if we talked about this before, but somebody made, I think it's somebody on the Boycott the Snyderverse page, somebody made this brilliant observation that you can't use the argument that the suit is outdated because it was based on the strongman look. Somebody made the wonderful observation that it wasn't based on the strongman because strongmen didn't wear full shirts and pants. They often wore a shirt that was sleeveless and maybe trunks over that. It was kind of like I guess a onesie in a way, and then they had bare legs and they had bare arms. And so what Siegel and Schuster did was they made something completely unique and new when they created that look. They had the trunks, but then a shirt and pants, and then a musketeer cape, and that was never before seen. And so because of that, it's not outdated, it's unique. And I think that is a genius way of looking at it. I never would have thought about it that way. So yeah, I don't. It must be. Who knows? I mean, I know if you are reading any DC comic with Superman, you'll see on that front page somewhere in special arrangement with Siegel and Schuster or the heirs, because they had to make that deal after the last lawsuit was settled. Yeah. So who knows if the trunks? I don't see how or why, because the merchandising has it. But anyway. Yeah. So, yeah, I love the suit, too. I don't like that already nobody's drawing it consistently. That kind of bugs me because Pat Gleason drew it looking like an M, which I thought was neat because it continued the M motif on the boots. And then you have Doug Mank here drawing it looking not like an M. I'm sure, like anything, it's going to change from artist to artist, but I do like the color balance, and I do like that it at least feels like the classic uniform. So what are your hopes going forward with this, for the Superman titles? In a way, I feel not a lack of interest, but I kind of feel like, okay, I've been riding along because I wanted to know the secrets here, and now that we know, I'm really interested. Okay, what's the next big thing they're going to be teasing me with?
Yeah. Well, I mean, immediately, just as we've been saying, I'm really excited. I want to see him rebuild the Superman family, not only his immediate family, which I already have, but as we said, the Supergirl and Steel, and I want him to rebuild all those bonds with the Super family that we like. I want him to rebuild bonds with the Justice League, with Batman and stuff like that. I want Batman and the Justice League to stop looking at him as some new guy. I want to see them recognize him as the real Superman. In terms of specific adventures for him and threats, we've still got to deal with Blanc. Blanc has been released now, remember?
Right.
And all those wonderful implications of him possibly being Chester Black, from the whatever happened to Truth, Justice, and the American Way, if they really do go that route, boy, there's some huge, even better, even more profound things to say about the split and what true heroism is and true Superman is and everything. So I'd like to see them really take on that. They teased it already. He's free. There's got to be some kind of repercussions.
Right, absolutely. And in that 2-page spread, I think, because it's not very clear from the art, it looks like there's 2 blanks, but I think one of them is supposed to be Ulysses, which Ulysses was the guy that Jeff Johns introduced when he took over New 52 Superman for 4 issues. And for those who didn't read that, Ulysses was supposed to be kind of an anti-Superman in a sense, because he was from another dimension, sent to our dimension by his... he was sent from Earth by his parents, who were scientists, to another dimension, an alien dimension, so that he could be saved from the explosion of their lab. And he was raised by those aliens and then came back to Earth. And of course, he was their agent, and he's turned out to be a bad guy. So looks like they're retaining him, but blank is in there.
Yeah.
And so very interesting. The solicits show that the next round of issues is going to have a new Superman Revenge Squad. And I was looking at the cover art for it the other day, and I just got really excited, because here's who you have. You have pre-Flashpoint Cyborg Superman, which tells me they're maybe unwriting or rewriting the Zor-El version. You then have Metallo, although he looks New 52, it's still Metallo. And then you have Mongol, and then leading them is General Zod. So that's how can Superman... My first thought was, how's he gonna get through this?
Yeah.
And that's a great way to look at it. You know, when you can be asked that question from a piece of art, you know the story is going to be good.
Yeah.
So he's got a new Superman Revenge Squad. He's going to be dealing with whatever this mystery is in Hamilton with the swamp, which we think is going to involve Blanc. And questions, we know it's been said, questions will be answered as we go across the board. So I'm really excited for it. I do miss the mystery, but I have a feeling we're going to see new mysteries added. And it's all leading up to the revelation, which I think in the next signpost for the Rebirth journey is the button crossover. Which is coming
Batman
up.
And Flash.
Yeah. So will Superman be involved in that? We don't know, but very interesting stuff there. And I think we're supposed to. Maybe I read this and misread it, but I think we're supposed to find out who Oz is in Aftermath, which Aftermath will be the next month's worth of the April dated Superman comics.
Oh, okay.
So if that's true, it's kind of time to show us who this guy is.
Yeah.
You know, we know now that he's very powerful, and we know now that he's surprised that Superman was able to undo whoever did this stuff, what was done to him. It would be nice to know who he is now. But we also know a big summer event is coming called Dark Days. I don't know if you read about that, Michael. It's called Dark Days, and it's very unclear as to whether or not it is the whole event or it's going to precede the event, but it deals with Batman. There's a shocker. But it's written by Scott Snyder, which instantly makes me kind of hesitant, but it's got art from Jason Fabok, who I love his art. It's got Jim Lee art. But the art looks beautiful, some of the shots that they've released, and the premise has to do with some threat that has been lying beneath the surface, is how it's described, and throughout the multiverse. So that's interesting. However that's going, wherever that's going, I have a feeling it's kind of just setting up the next series of stories. Yeah, you know, because we're hitting the year anniversary of Rebirth in May, so it's about
2 years is supposed to go, right?
Right. It goes presumably until May of 2018, and I really think the climax of Rebirth wouldn't surprise me if the climax of the story happens in Action 1000, which would be late March of 2018. And then they just kind of they give us the new DC universe, what it's going to look like post Action 1000. On the other hand, I really would like it to just be about Superman and not the whole story. But we'll see, you know, what happens. I can't wait. I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, me too.
That issue. So any other thoughts as we wrap up Reborn?
Not really, just excited and glad to be along for the ride. Glad to have so much of good stuff to be enjoying on the way.
Yes. glad to have Superman back, finally.
Yes.
No more New 52 Superman and pre-Flashpoint Superman. And we are specifically told, as we mentioned here, we are specifically told, I just want to read it again so I don't misquote it, because two realities are now united as one. And, well, no, maybe they don't have this quote in here. But he says, a new continuity consistent with the memories and experiences of all. So this is something new. We're going into a new phase, and I love that it happened in the Superman books. So
absolutely,
we will do another episode of Superman Lives in a few weeks. We're going to get a couple more Aftermath issues under our belt. We're also going to come back and talk about television news is kind of on the low because we're about to go to the into the summer break. But we're going to try to get back to that. And then we've talked about doing specific topics. So we'll focus on not necessarily just the comics, events, or movies. We'll have, old storylines that we want to address, and things of that nature. So we hope you'll stick around for that. Any shout outs, Michael, before we go?
Nope. Just want to remind listeners that my book, I know I keep beating into the ground, but that's what authors do with marketing.
You should, though, because it's worth it.
Oh, cool. Thanks. It's been released. The release date has been released for May 1st. So May 1st, it'll be available on all the booksellers online, as well as from my publisher, whatever. I'll be sending out links and everything. Cover looks great. Very Superman heavy in the imagery. So I'm excited.
I love that cover. Michael showed me the cover, and Al, and that's just beautiful. It's very inspirational as it, goes along with the theme of the book. And I was amazed but I guess there's really nothing copyright-wise that doesn't have an S on it.
Yeah.
But it's iconic imagery, so it's really great. And when you see this book on the shelves, you're going to want to buy it, kids. So I mean, it's just one, because it's going to be a great book, but that cover really makes it pop. So can't wait for it. And then of course we just recorded with Al. We did our latest episode of Holy Roman Fanboys, which is a podcast that explores Catholic faith and really Christian faith and faith in general, but with a Catholic bent and geek happenings, and we're being really timely with it. So we just talked about Iron Fist, and we're going to keep that rolling. And the big show is going to drop another episode by the time this episode of Superman Lives is out. That episode of of the big show will be out with a review of Life, which is not worth living. In the sense that it's not worth seeing that movie. Life is worth living, but the movie not watching at the theater. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the Disgustus League trailer that dropped. So, do you want to talk about that at all while at the end here, or do you want to?
I'm sure you will cover all of my disgust for it as well. So I'm going to go ahead and let you speak for me. Yeah, I don't even. It's one of those things. I used to go to that dark place, especially after you talked about Superman Reborn.
Exactly. I was going to say, why sully it? Because it's such a great, Reborn is so much better and is what it should be. So we'll leave it at that then. Well, kids, thanks so much for listening. Remember to look up, because Superman lives.
Superman Lives can be found on YouTube, iTunes, the Superman Podcast Network at supermanpodcastnetwork.com, and on the podcast's Facebook page, Superman Lives Podcast. Send feedback, suggestions, and questions to hosts Chris Moe and Michael Kreitzer at supermanlivespodcast@gmail.com. All music featured in the Superman Lives broadcast is the intellectual property of Warner Brothers. Superman and all related characters are the intellectual property of DC Comics, a division of DC Entertainment. Superman Lives is intended solely for the purpose of entertainment and does not in any way profit from its production or content. Superman Lives is a production of Big Show Studios and Iconic Superman on Facebook.